Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. And on today's DCEU Daily, we'll be focusing on the Snyderverse portion of the DCEU, because David Ayer has been acting very curiously for a long time. You could even say from the moment James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was greenlit, showing great support to James Gunn, going, way beyond you would expect him to, considering it should really have been him who did a Suicide Squad sequel and not James Gunn, and what the studio did to his original Suicide Squad. But he's even been very positive towards the studio. Take a listen to this. This is from EW's Eric Webster. Shocked Warner's let me on the lot today after yesterday's June tweet. Keep it on the down low though. And this is what David Ayer had to say. They're actually really cool people, but it didn't stop there. Because then, Big Screen Leaks BSL said this, reacting to what Ayer said about WB being really good people. David, you just hurt thousands of fans. Which is very interesting. David says, it's my truth. It's also my home studio. But someone else made a very, very important comment. Mr. J, who follows me and I follow him on Twitter, said a very intelligent thing. Nobody's getting hurt. David is playing the game and probably gaining more favour from the studio by doing so, thus increasing our chances to release the Ayer cut. So that's a good point. Of course he's playing the game, but is he playing the game, or has he already been told that his version of the Suicide Squad has been greenlit? Well, he's also been releasing some images from his Suicide Squad movie, and let's read a Screen Rant article about it. David Ayer teases cut Joker scene in new Suicide Squad movie photos. Suicide Squad director David Ayer releases new photos of Jared Leto's Joker, teasing scenes that were seemingly cut from the final edit of the film. By Brendan Kim of Screen Rant. David Ayer, director of 2016 Suicide Squad, has unveiled new pictures from the so-called Ayer cut of the film. Similar to 2017's Justice League, Suicide Squad was detrimentally impacted by studio interference from Warner Brothers, who felt that Ayer's original cut did not meet the studio's standards. And what are those standards? Let's talk about at that time, were Justice League, not great standards, right? Anyway, who felt that Ayer's original cut did not meet the studio's standards. The clash of conflicting creative visions and meddling executives resulted in a final product that was ultimately panned by critics and audiences alike, despite earning a sizable profit at the box office. By the way, I really like the first Suicide Squad film, warts and all, but I really do want to see the Ayer cut to see what all the fuss is about. I want to see if this is a better movie. Over the past several months, fans have campaigned for Warner Brothers to release Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad. This comes off the heels of the successful release, the Snyder Cut movement, where fan campaigns actually convinced the studio to give director Zack Snyder a second shot at realising his creative vision for Justice League. Although Ayer is less optimistic about his own film's chances, he nevertheless continues to tease images and story beats from his cut of the film. At one point, the director even commented on a leaked script for the original cut of Suicide Squad, actually confirming that that leaked script was his script. So, very compelling stuff. Now Ayer has released new images of Jared Leto's depiction of the Joker, as well as one of his henchmen on his Instagram story. The first image shows the Joker in the now infamous Circle of Knives hotel room set, holding a gun to his own head. The second image shows the goat-head priest wielding a rifle, presumably during the assault on Arkham Asylum as briefly depicted in the final film. Check out the images below. So here they are, very, very interesting. So the top one is obviously awesome, isn't it? And we did see it in one of the trailers, if I remember rightly, or am I wrong? That's how I remember it anyway. And then we've got Goathead there, also looking very goat-like. So, yeah, some great images there. So why is he leaking some images at this moment? The timing is interesting with DC Fandom under a month away. Leto's depiction of the Clown Prince of Crime is one of the more controversial aspects of the original film, perhaps in part due to the character's underdevelopment. Indeed, script leaks of the Ayer cut confirm that the Joker's role in the film was significantly altered for the final cut. The hotel room and the assault on Arkham scenes last for just a few seconds in the theatrical release. However, Ayer's teases seem to indicate that these portions of the film were more fleshed out in his version of the script. Ayer's glimpses into his original film cut continue to rake in likes and shares on social media, particularly from dedicated DC fans who want to see the director's original cut for Suicide Squad Suicide Squad come to fruition. Given the precedent set by Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, the Ayer cut is unquestionably within the realm of possibility, especially considering the fact that according to Ayer, the cut is only a few unfinished VFX scenes away from being complete. Even if the Ayer cut doesn't live up to expectations, its release would at the very least provide the director some much deserved closure, and that's very true. Are we getting this film? Is getting this film realistic? The way David's behaving, the unnerving support for WB and James Gunn's The Suicide Squad would say he's either A, playing the game because he's been told to play the game and he's been told if he does, he'll get his cut, or he's already been told his cut has been green-lit. These two things can be the only reasons either or why he's acting this way, because his behaviour and his support for WB and Gunn's Suicide Squad are very transparent. And in life, when people act transparent, they're doing it on purpose. They blatantly want you to see them supporting something, right? And so I think we're getting the Ayer cut. I think it's going to be announced on October the 16th at this year's DC Fandom. Now, this would be absolutely fantastic. I'll say again, and I've said it before, I think the Ayer cut should have been released before the Snyder cut on HBO Max. It would have been a great build-up. Narratively, the Ayer cut was, Suicide Squad was originally released before Justice League anyway. The time, it would have just been the complete vision, or not the complete vision of the Snyderverse, because we still got another 2 Justice League movies which we may or may not get, but I think this is what they should have done, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't do that. Now, why wouldn't they release the Ayer cut? Well, we know that studios don't like their mistakes kind of waved in their face, but A, either the Ayer cut is really bad, or it's so good the embarrassment on the former leadership of the studio would be so huge they don't want the public to see it. Look at the kind of the tactics they put in, in the way of the Snyder cut. Trying to leak some of the movie on HBO Max, which was despicable. But there are reasons for that. There was some kind of civil war going on between Snyder and Ray Fisher. Well, not between them two, but them two and the studio. And so those things can be explained, but still it's not the way a studio, an actor and a director should be behaving against each other. It does not look good, and I'm sure there will be big consequences for the people involved in that situation when David Zaslav and Discovery take over. But yeah, I believe David Ayer is acting this transparently because we are finally going to see the Ayer cut on HBO Max, and I believe this will be announced on this year's DC Fandom on October the 16th. If this is in fact true, this would be, well, an unparalleled moment for Snyderverse fans. It would be a second victory in the space of, 2 years? It would be absolutely amazing, and I hope it happens. I want to see the movie. I like David Ayer. He's a great writer, director. He's a passionate guy. He sees the world in a certain way. He comes from a military background as well. So he's a very interesting, unique guy. And I want to see this film because I think it's about time we all got to make our own minds up about David's movies. It's great to release images, but we don't know what type of film this was. David Ayer believes that this is a considerably different movie than the one we saw in theatres in 2016, if I remember rightly. Now, as I've said already, I like what we saw of the first Suicide Squad film, but I want to see David's full vision, because in the release movie it says written and directed by David Ayer. Did he write a lot of those rewrites? Did he rewrite them? Or did the studio? Did he direct the reshoots? Or did someone come in like Joss Whedon and do the reshoots? Maybe it was Joss Whedon himself. Who knows? Who knows? Truths like that we'll probably never know. But fingers crossed, I believe we are very close to seeing the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. The history behind Frank Miller's graphic novels and Zack Snyder is very interesting. Snyder is obsessed with Frank Miller's storytelling, you know, in terms of 300 and The Dark Knight Returns. So he's very obsessed with him and his work. We know he did 300. In fact, he took 300, he took the graphic novel 300 and brought those frames from the pages of the comics into live action. Now, what's interesting about Snyder's 300, it's the only film that Snyder's ever made that is universally loved by critics and the audiences. It's the only film he wasn't kind of hated for. Although, that's kind of untrue as well, if I think about it, because the Snyder Cut was lauded by everyone. Even if people were saying, well, it's better than Justice League, I suppose that's better than nothing. But 300 was loved by everyone. Frank Miller reacts to Zack Snyder's DC movies referencing Dark Knight Returns. Comic legend Frank Miller reacts to director Zack Snyder's DCEU movies referencing his acclaimed graphic novel series, The Dark Knight Returns, by Paul Cherie of Screen Rant. Legendary writer-artist Frank Miller reacts to Zack Snyder referencing his graphic novel comic, The Dark Knight Returns, in several of the DCEU films. Miller began his rise to fame on Marvel's Daredevil title back in the 80s, creating such characters as Daredevil's Elektra, Stick and Nuke, before making waves with his take on a Batman of the future with The Dark Knight Returns. The comic book followed an aging Bruce Wayne in his continued efforts to spread his crime-fighting presence and battle not only his rogues gallery, but one of his greatest allies, Superman. Director Zack Snyder hasn't been shy about his love and influence of Miller's work. Particularly with The Dark Knight Returns, Snyder included some heavy references in Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, including the famous suit worn by Batman to battle Superman and several shots that mimic panels from the series. In Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, there's a sequence at the end which shows Batman standing atop the Bat-Tank, which looks nearly identical to the one utilised in The Dark Knight Returns, once again signalling Snyder's affection for Miller's work. What's great about Snyder visually, as an artist visually, he can take somebody's panels and bring them to life beautifully. In live action, there's that moment when Batman's in his, battle suit and it's raining and you see the lights, glow up. It's so beautiful, but it doesn't just look beautiful, it echoes the panels of Miller's comic. In an interview ahead of the next episode of the Beard and the Bald movie podcast, Miller talks about Snyder's use of The Dark Knight Returns in his work, particularly Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Miller said that at first he felt territorial over the use of his material, but after he had some time to take it all in, he felt it was great, noting the impact The Dark Knight Returns has had on his career and how much he's benefited from it. Miller says that the entire collaboration from comic to screen has been a healthy relationship. Take a look at the full quote below. I really got to say about that, a few years have gone by since all this started, okay? And at first my reaction was to be very territorial and all that. And now I'm kind of sat back with a much deeper breath and longer view on the whole thing, and all I can say is this is great. I mean, I came up with my idea for The Dark Knight Returns, and that basically was the big splash I made, which started my whole career going. And since then, I've seen the two fields collaborate back and forth. I've benefited greatly from The Dark Knight Returns, and so have they, and continue to. And it can only be looked at as a healthy relationship. So that's great that Frank Miller appreciates what Zack did. But to be honest with you, what Zack did was love. You can't hate that, it's love. It's not like he adapted his, Miller's work and shitted on it. He echoed what was in those panels of those books, and it's beautiful. Snyder has not only used Miller's references from The Dark Knight Returns in his DCEU films, but has even adapted one of Miller's other signature books, 300. Miller wrote and drew 300 as a large format graphic novel, and Snyder famously adapted it with unrelenting accuracy, ripping panels straight from the comic page and bringing them to life on the big screen. Snyder has called The Dark Knight Returns his white whale, a kind of dream project that he'd love to adapt someday, which is something he'd want to do in the vein of 300, pulling panels from the book and bringing them to life. Animation director Jay Oliver has already given The Dark Knight Returns the animated adaptation treatment, which was released in 2013 in 2 parts. Miller is currently celebrating the 30th anniversary of another seminal work of his, Sin City, for which he's just prepared to launch his first foray into MFTR with Sin City Originals. Miller has done multiple sequel series to The Dark Knight Returns and continues to be a major influence on the comics and film medium. He co-directed the Sin City films with Robert Rodriguez. Jesus Christ, I didn't know he co-directed it. What a talented man. And says that he's had discussions to do more with the property. Regardless of what Miller does next, his influence over the medium of comics continues to reverberate through filmed entertainment, be it Batman, Daredevil, Sin City, 300 and beyond. It's only a matter of time before another filmmaker pulls from the creator's long legacy of work to shine a light on it on the big or small screen. Yeah, listen, Frank Miller's a fucking genius, he really is. And let's be clear, not everything he's ever done is awesome. He's also got his duds, but it's like me. I've been trying to write a script for one of my plays and I keep on screwing the papers up. We're not always on, no. But you know, when you've got Sin City and 300 and The Dark Knight Returns, if I could pull out 3 perfect stories like that, you could lay me in a coffin, and what a way to fucking go at the end of the day. And I just think it's great that Snyder's taken those pages and brought them to life within the DCEU, the 300 movie, and Robert Rodriguez's Sin City as well. You know, Frank Miller is an absolute legend, and you know, it's so good that these directors have got so much respect for him. It's interesting, isn't it? You would think DC fans would be on the same page and we wouldn't be against each other. There wouldn't be a kind of civil war. Right now, there is a fan group basically anticipating the Batman. They are convinced, like I am by the way, that it's going to be one of the greatest DC comic book movies ever made, or comic book movies in general, full stop. Now, fans of Batfleck's Batman are very triggered by this, and they're kind of screaming obscenities at this group of fans. Now, let me explain to you why people are so excited and so sure Matt Reeves' The Batman and Gotham PD on HBO Max are going to be absolutely awesome. It's confidence in the artist, in the director. You know, we've seen Matt Reeves. We know what he can do with 2 Planet of the Apes movies and other stuff as well. The man is a genius. He does know what he's doing. And I think if you're a Batfleck fan, you should settle down to enjoy the Batman as well. And keep on supporting the return of Batfleck's own the Batman movie. I know why you guys are angry. I'm as frustrated as you are. There's nothing more that I would have loved to have seen, because I predicted it before anyone else did, as soon as he was cast as Batman, by the way. You know, there's nothing I would have wanted more than a Batman movie starring Ben Affleck as Batman Bruce Wayne, and one that's written and directed by him. Apparently it's a beautiful script as well, and I mean, we've heard some of the concepts. You know, what Deathstroke was going to do to Bats. It would have been a sensational movie. I'm still fighting for that, and you're still fighting for it. But for the love of God, or for the love of Superman, because I'm not really religious, right? For the love of Superman, don't hate on the Batman or its fans or Matt Reeves. They ain't done anything to you. Yes, of course Matt Reeves didn't want Ben Affleck. He wanted his own man. He wanted the younger Batman. That's what his tale is about. It's a year 2 story. Matt Reeves wasn't being toxic. The studio tried their best to convince Reeves to stick with Affleck, but he wasn't having it, and he nearly walked because of that situation. But I don't think Matt's to blame because he didn't want Ben. He wanted his own Batman, and that's okay. You know what? Moving on a bit now, moving on from that, my final point today is about the MCU. Now, as you know, I'm a DCEU stan. I love the thing. I love DC Comics. I love I've seen so much in live action from DC as well. Someone asked me the other day, because I'm an actor, if I was given the opportunity to play an MCU character and be in the MCU, which many actors are queuing up to do, who would I like to play and would I do it? First of all, I wouldn't want to play any MCU character, and I would reject any offer to be in the MCU. Why is that? Well, for me it's sacrilege. For me, I want to be in the DCEU. I want to be in a DC live action series or DC movie playing a character. Now, obviously, it'd be great to play Superman, but it's never going to happen, right? I mean, there's lots of characters I'd like to play. I mean, Lex Luthor would be brilliant. I think I could give a great kind of portrayal of my own version of Lex Luthor. I've got the bald head. I don't know about the thick eyebrows. We might have to shave them away a little bit. But I think, look, after what Rosenbaum did on Smallville, I was really inspired, and I thought I could do something like that. Not the same, of course, because what Rosenbaum and Gotham Miller did on Smallville with Lex was sensational. But yeah, I'd love to play Lex Luthor. I think that's the character I would like to play. But, you know, no disrespect to the MCU and Marvel stands. I would never, ever, you know, I would be offended at being offered to be play a character in the MCU, because even though I watch the films and I collect them on Blu-ray and 4K and all of that, and I think they're okay, you know, I'm a DC fan. And no matter how many times people like James Gunn and others and other journalists say, why do DC and Marvel fans hate each other? Why do they pull each other's pigtails so much? Well, it's just like supporting, basically, in the UK, I'm a Man United fan. Liverpool are our enemies, you know, and to Liverpool, Manchester United are our enemies, because we're two huge clubs, you know, near each other's areas, and we're probably two of the most successful, if not the two most successful clubs in the United Kingdom. So there's a lot of banter there. And in comics, the two most successful comic book companies are DC Comics, aka Detective Comics originally, and Marvel Comics. And there's a lot of history. We've had comic book writers come to us, then go to Marvel. There's a lot of history there. So just like I would never, if I was a footballer, I would never play for Liverpool as a Man United fan, I would never, ever, ever want to be involved with the MCU. I would never promote the MCU. Now, I've done MCU videos talking about stuff, because there's stuff I get excited about sometimes. But ultimately, I'm a DC man. And there's one thing I could never do or never live with myself about or sleep at night if I got involved with the MCU. It's never, ever going to happen. I mean, there are characters that interest me. Kingpin would be a great character to play, very similar to Lex in a lot of ways. Love to play him. Vincent D'Onofrio, what a version of Kingpin we saw in the Daredevil series, and apparently he's going to be in Hawkeye, which is exciting, and I'll watch Hawkeye, and I'll enjoy it, no doubt. But the point being, no way, I would never, ever, ever play an MCU character, ever. Or Sony Spider-Man universe character, or anything like that. I will probably never get to play any DC character, be in any DC TV show or movie, but I tell you what, I would absolutely love to do it. You know that Soups guy, he was saying he wants to be in the MCU. I mean, he claims to be a big Superman fan and DC fan, but he's clearly a bigger MCU fan, but you know, he's a hugely successful kind of person who talks about, you know, geek stuff. So what's the best thing to talk about to get yourself views, clicks and likes and make the most money? He's verified, of course, the MCU. Well, I'm not going to do that. I've done MCU videos before, I'm not going to lie. But I even tried to do something called the DCEU MCU Daily. It didn't really work out for me in the end, because the MCU, even though I think it's okay and I like it, it doesn't get the juices flowing. When I think about the DCEU or DC Comics, I get excited. When I saw Andy Muschietti posting that Flash Batman insignia the other day, oh my God, I got a fucking boner. I'm not going to lie to you, because I'm a DCEU stan. I'm a DC stan. I love DC. I love these DC universes and characters. And if I was offered a part in DC live action, which of course is never going to happen, it would be like winning the lottery. You know, so I would never do anything to ruin my chances of doing that. So, look, we're talking about what if here, not the Marvel series, but what if? What if this happened? And I would never take a Marvel job, you know. For me, it's not something that interests me. And I mean, you're saying, well, Mick, you're all right, you're an actor on stage and all that, but this would be your big break. Why wouldn't you take it? Well, isn't it like what Ray Fisher says? You know, it's about morals. He talks about accountability over entertainment. And it's the same thing with me. My accountability over entertainment is that I would do almost anything in the acting genre, and if I was given a chance on television and film, of course I would take it to act, write or direct or anything. But at the end of the day, and I'd not only love to perform in the DCEU, I'd love to write and direct a movie as well. But, you know, yeah, I'm saving myself. Like many people say, don't sleep with anyone until they fall in love. It's like me and DC live action. I would never, ever, ever, ever would never get involved with the MCU over the DCEU. That's another good question, isn't it? If I had a choice, would it be obvious, wouldn't it, between the MCU and DCEU? It would always be the DCEU. I mean, it would just be so exciting, wouldn't it, to be involved with one of those projects. I mean, you look at the projects we've had since 2013. I would have loved to have been involved with Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, the first Suicide Squad, the first Wonder Woman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Snyder Cut, Aquaman, you know, Todd Phillips' Joker movie. What an honour that would have been, just to be an extra. And so, you know, we live in hope. You never know, that might happen to me. But someone did ask me that and wanted me to discuss it on today's video. I'm sorry that I forgot your name, but yeah, that's out of the question. Being involved in the MCU is just something I could never do. You know, for me, you know, it's, look, it's I suppose it's like being asked by your favourite singer to be in the background of their new video, or basically being asked by their rival. You'd always choose the person you've always supported. And I've always supported the DCEU, warts and all, because it hasn't always been perfect, has it? But you know, that's what I want to do. That's my dream, to be involved with a DCEU movie. Just to be involved with WB and DC would be a great honour for me. And it wouldn't really be honourable for me to be involved with the MCU. It's not something that I would enjoy. You know, I wouldn't get anything out of it. I'm sure Kevin Feige's a great guy. I'm sure, you know, the fans would give me lots of respect and be good to me, but it's not really something that floats my boat. And so maybe one day I can be involved with the DCEU, and that would be my absolute honour, to advise them, maybe to even consult with them, tell them where they've been going wrong lately. I think as a fan and someone who writes and, you know, directs and performs in his own plays, I could have an interesting perspective. But not just me and my experience in the industry, you could, as fans. It's very interesting. I sometimes think that ordinary people, ordinary consumers, ordinary fans of DC have a better perspective on the comics and live action than the actual people who are sometimes involved with these things. It's interesting when we go from Batman Returns to Batman Forever. What a big mistake, just to sell toys. And then they went from that to Batman and Robin, a huge, embarrassing disaster. And all they had to do was stick with Tim Burton, because he wanted to make a third movie, and I'm sure he would have made a fourth as well. So very, very sad what happened. What happens sometimes, studios look to the money rather than the content. And this is what happened between Snyder and Whedon. You know, instead of sticking with Snyder, they saw that Whedon made a lot of money for Disney and Marvel with the first Avengers movie. This'll be easy. Let's have him brighten this up. It'll be fine. They had him on somebody else's story, and he had to reassess that story. I don't remember anyone doing a good job with it. I mean, Ron Howard kind of did something with Solo: A Star Wars Story, but I think it's utterly challenging to take over somebody's vision and try and reassert the narrative and make it more appealing to the broader audience. And you can't go from Zack Snyder to Joss Whedon. It wasn't fair on Whedon, and it most certainly wasn't fair on Snyder. But yeah, as you know, the DCEU is what I think about every day. I watch trailers about the DCEU. I talk to other DCEU fans throughout the day, and I hold out hope that one day I will be involved with a DC project, because what an honour that would be. Listen, the DCEU, DC live action since 2013, in fact, going beyond that, going back to Green Lantern, Batman Begins and Superman Returns, it's been hard. Batman Begins is a great movie, but The Dark Knight is the one that's lauded. Batman Begins didn't make a lot of money, you know, and The Dark Knight made over $1 billion. Superman Returns didn't make a lot of money, but I have a soft place in my heart for that movie. The same with Green Lantern. I think there's some great elements. I think OR was handled wonderfully by Martin Campbell, but there's a lot of other stuff where they made mistakes, obviously. And then we go to Man of Steel, a great movie that's divisive. Batman vs Superman, a great movie that's divisive. Again with the first Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman was lauded and loved by everyone. Then the Justice League situation, you know, the controversy around Joker as well. It's been a hard slog, but as I say every single day, be proud of what's been done since the early 2000s with live action DC. There's been a lot of great moments, controversial moments. Smallville was utterly controversial at the beginning. People didn't like the changes Alan Miles made to the legacy of Superman, but they got used to it and enjoyed it. So I think we've got a lot to be proud of in terms of DC live action since the strike of the millennium. And then we go back prior to that with Burton's Batman, Donner's Superman. There's still a lot of great things to be proud of in terms of DC live action. When people say it sucks, defend it, love it, consume it, because the DC live action universe is the place to be. And we're only going to go from strength to strength as we know what's happening next year. The Batman, Black Adam, The Rock is in the DCEU house. The Flashpoint movie, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Fury of the Gods in 2023, Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Superman, the Val Zod Superman, Blue Beetle, Batgirl. There's some amazing projects. Just looking at, you know, the Latino stars we're introducing to the DCEU live action universe really excites me. Sasha Calle, the Blue Beetle guy. And I'm not sure what background was it Leslie Grace is from either. I'm not sure. I think she's from a minority background, but I'm not sure which one, so I don't want to be insulting by getting it wrong. So I'm excited by the Latino kind of inclusion we're getting as well. Look, the past has been great. It hasn't worked for everyone, but it's been great and I'm proud of it mostly. And when you look at the future and those, you know, those titles I've just talked about, there's a lot to be proud about. Be proud of your love for the DCEU. Don't be ashamed and don't worry about the future product because it's looking very, very exciting. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. I will see you on Wednesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Don't just hear me talk about it then go off. Like, share. Share is very important, as is like. It gets me noticed on the algorithm. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that beautiful little bell. You'll feel this tingling sensation when you do it, and you'll never miss this perfection. So until tomorrow, goodbye.